Rip City Mornings.
As we came down to the wire last night at Petco Park, no, it wasn't a walk-off in the bottom of the ninth, but it sure felt like it as Bo Nix hits Chase Cota for what seemed to be the game-winning touchdown. Of course, the Oregon kicker decided to give us all one last scare like a zombie movie, but the Ducks end the season on a win. They are 10-3 in Dan Lanning's first year. Bo Nix and company are coming back. Joining us now to take a look back at the Holiday Bowl, the 2022 season, and looking ahead for the Oregon Ducks. My old partner in crime from 95.3 The Score in Eugene. He is the host of Crunch Time and Sports Talk. He is a friend of the program. Steve Tannen back on The Big Show. Good morning, Steve. How are you?
Good morning. Nothing like a snoozer to wrap up your Wednesday and lead us into a Thursday. My heavens.
I want to dive into a couple of things from the game last night. You tweeted about this. I may or may not have just done an 11-minute monologue about this before you came on. But the fact that in 2022 we still have people in this world saying the name Oregon. I don't know why this bugs me so much. Now, look, you are from the East Coast. You are from the great state of New Jersey, and then you came out here in the 90s. How long did it take you, as a guy from the East Coast, to understand that Oregon is not acceptable? Or you're a smart guy. You probably knew before you came out here.
Not even close. but remember, prior to arriving in Eugene in 1990, the only Oregon football game I had ever seen was the 89 Independence Bowl. They were a non-entity, and the running joke at my going-away party was, "There, Steve, here today, Oregon tomorrow." That's how we all said it, and I'll tell you, it was really quick. It was prior to the radio station starting up, the reason I had moved out there. And the first person who heard me said, "Let's get one thing straight. You do not want to say Oregon, living out here trying to win over Oregonians." So it was basically a one-and-done mistake, and I got it. But when I heard that woman, the CEO of the credit union, I was like, oh my God, she's got the worst PR people ever.
Wow, good. And by the way, you 1990, right? We didn't have the internet. We didn't have social media. Like you said, Oregon football has been pretty good the last couple of years. Last time I checked, and to still like, oh yeah, or the Oregon Ducks. Like, oh my goodness gracious! And you know how like you grew up in the Northeast, where it's like people are abrupt and they get right to the point. In the South, right, you have a Southern hospitality about you. We have very few cultural things out here. One of them just happens to be the pronunciation of our state. We get really, really passionate about it.
I would imagine that if she wasn't the CEO walking into work today, there would have been like posters and banners peppering her with improper pronunciations. So if she had any class at all, she would walk in and just say, "Okay, quick meeting. I get it. It'll never happen again. I apologize."
But instead, she probably walked in and everybody was like, "Crushed it last night, boss. Great job."
Right.
Really did us proud. Steve Tannen from 95.3 The Score in Eugene joining us here on 620 Rip City Radio. All right, let's talk about the game last night. Steve, obviously, as we mentioned, boy, it was a nail-biter coming down to the wire. Kind of looking back at the stat sheet, I know that Bo Nix is going to get a lot of the praise, as he should, considering what he did all season, and obviously that 4th and 2 pass is one of those special moments that he has had. But Steve, how about Tosh Lupoi, a guy whose defense kind of was getting torched by the end of last year and looked like maybe looking that same way in the first half, and then giving up no touchdowns in the second half and some great halftime adjustments. I thought the defense for Oregon really was the big winner in the second half.
Yeah, the Oregon defense, I think the story of 2022 will be ignore the stats, make some notes, and look at the Utah game and the bowl game where they really rose up and gave the offense a chance. Look, victory has a tendency to push issues to the side, and getting off the field via 3rd and 4th down is a problem, and it's going to need to be addressed. But, man, when they needed stops, they were able to go to them well more than once. And like I said, you felt like with that North Carolina defense that had taken such a hit from the portal of guys prepping for the NFL, in particular in the secondary, that they just needed opportunity. And the defense did rise up and give it to them. I thought guys like Jalil Florence, Triquez Bridges, who were not front and center all year, capitalized on that opportunity.
Bo Nix gets the fourth quarter comeback, and obviously the big story with him coming back next year. And I'm curious, kind of the thought in Eugene, Steve, because I thought by the time he got hurt against Washington, common sense, and which shows what I know, would probably say, you know what, this guy's got a chance at the NFL. He's got an ankle injury. He gutted it out for 2 games for Oregon. I don't think he's playing in this Holiday Bowl. I don't think he's playing for Oregon. He's going to head to the NFL. And lo and behold, a couple of weeks later, not only is he playing in the Holiday Bowl, he's coming back. How surprised not only maybe were you or maybe the fans down in Eugene that Bo Nix made that decision, considering all that he has done this year to kind of put himself on that NFL map, which he wasn't on before?
To put a twist on a famous saying, mediocre minds think alike. Because every person I took on, folks, Aaron Fentress of the Oregonian, Tyson Alger, I-5 guard, or Joey Mack, who does the sideline, every person who's come on my show since he made the announcement, I've been like, after the Oregon State game, I was pretty much, he's done. There's no way he's playing in the Holiday Bowl. Why would he after all he's gone through? He made an NFL name for himself. He's on his way. Always remember him. Guy had a spectacular year, but he's gone. So, obviously. But, of course, let's put things in perspective. I also thought Herbert was gone. Yeah. And I also thought the Bulls should have taken Sam Bowie over Michael Jordan. So, wrong. And, by the way, delighted to be wrong in this case because not only he, but what this quarterback situation is going to look like in the Pac-12 next year is going to be nuts.
Well, and that's what's interesting now in the fact, like, the NIL ship has sailed. This is the new normal in college football. Guys can capitalize on opportunities like Bo Nix and Michael Penix. And I wonder, Steve, obviously, if you're a top 10 draft pick, you're likely going to be the starter for a team next year. Yeah, you don't come back to college. But if you're like a third-round grade, I'm just thinking quality of life. Would you rather go and be the backup for the Baltimore Ravens and make about $900,000 a year and never play? Or would you rather come back, start every game, live like a god in Eugene and Seattle and Corvallis, probably make more than a rookie will make in the NFL? I mean, just say quality of life. College can now actually compete from a quarterback standpoint with the NFL, which is kind of amazing because we never thought that was ever going to be possible.
Yeah, well, first of all, with guys like Penix and Nix, they're coming back as conquering heroes. And not only that, they're coming back to really good teams who won double-digit games. They'll be in the second year of a regime that kind of in season one made a pretty substantial impact, good recruiting. And like you said, the NFL's not going anywhere. And with a guy like Nix, if he comes back and stays healthy and has another kind of productive year like he did, you would imagine he could rise from 4th round, 3rd round, maybe late 2nd round. So it just, whether it be the NIL or the multitude of changes that we've seen, it just seems like something I obviously didn't consider in the heat of the moment. It just seems there's a value there that just never existed before.
Steve, I always have to try to kind of have a little talk with myself because, like probably every one of us, I get a little too deep into Twitter sometimes, and you get kind of, that algorithm starts messing with you, and you start thinking it's real life when it's, everybody's talking about it, when it's really about 7 people, but it's all right in front of your face, and it seems like it's a very big deal when maybe it isn't. The reason I bring this up, because just taking a look back, big picture 2022 with Oregon football and Dan Lanning. Again, Twitter is not real life, but if you kind of go, it has been kind of a roller coaster. Starting with that Georgia beatdown and some Oregon fans going like, oh boy, I don't know about this. They got things figured out. Bo Nix is a Heisman Trophy candidate. They're potentially in the college football playoff. Then questionable decisions on 4th down against Washington and against Oregon State. And then you lose Dante Moore. He can't recruit. He's got a top 10 recruiting class. Turns out he can recruit. Boy, what a roller coaster ride for emotional Oregon fans on Dan Lanning this year. But kind of looking back, pretty positive considering where this program thought they were when Mario Cristobal left town.
Yeah, if you remember how heartbroken people were and talking about being jilted and all that nonsense, when anybody who thought that Miami would open and Cristobal wouldn't jump at it were kind of naive. But, think about the emotional roller coaster of the fans. Imagine being Lanning. He uproots his family, moves diagonally like 2,800 miles across the country. He's never been a head coach, and not only getting a head coaching job, but let's face it, Oregon is one of the most substantial jobs in this conference, thus in this country. He goes through the emotions of going back to Georgia, getting destroyed. Then there's his first win. Then there's his first win at Autzen. Then there's his first conference win. And he's going through this emotional roller coaster. And I do believe if you nailed down honest Oregon fans on Labor Day, and they said they would win 10 games, have a great Holiday Bowl victory over a team that played for the ACC title, and would have a guy like Nix have the season he did, who saw that coming, I would say a substantial percentage of Duck fans would have signed on without a second thought.
And then you go back to this last week, which it's still kind of weird to me. You and I, when we were on the air together down in Eugene, and when we covered a ton of Oregon football, I think you and I both kind of viewed recruiting from a certain necessary evil standpoint. I don't like talking about high school kids. I don't like following high school kids on Twitter, but there is a market for it. We got to talk about recruiting. It is impactful to the program. And there are people that get, I think, way too into the weeds when it comes to recruiting. But to see what Dan Lanning in kind of his first full year as an Oregon coach was able to do on signing day, and almost make the Holiday Bowl kind of an afterthought, because Bo Nix is coming back and all Oregon fans could talk about is the quarterback and the recruiting class. It's pretty fascinating stuff in 2022 where the bowl game is almost kind of irrelevant considering the signing day and the recruiting stuff kind of took center stage.
Yeah, I would say even before Willie Taggart arrived, all the success through the Brooks Bellotti era with Chip and through Helfrich, it was always about Oregon recruits Oregon guys. They bring in a 2-star like Patrick Chung and they turn him into an NFL player. They take a 3-star from Hawaii and turn him into a Heisman winner. And all of a sudden, Taggart was like, well, I feel like I could walk into any den. And people were like, yeah, that's coach speak. And you started to see the fruits of his labor kind of pay off. And Cristobal and his guys took it up another level. And Lanning and these guys, I just want to say, they have no shame. I mean, they just figure they could land anybody. And after losing more, what was seen as a great tragedy, it's like, yeah, I don't know if losing any high school player at the college football level is that devastating. Then they flipped that Novosad kid from Baylor. They landed DJ Uigalele's brother, a 5-star who came here. And what you said is right. I've never been someone to plunge into the recruiting pool, more like dipping of a toe. I found myself with a 17-page printout with a highlighter, just reading about these kids like I'm Matt Preem or one of these recruiting nuts.
Steve Tannen is the host of Crunch Time and Sports Talk on 95.3 The Score down in Eugene, joining us here on 620 Rip City Radio. You mentioned Mateo Uiagalelei, his brother now coming to Corvallis. I know you touched on it a minute ago. The Pac-12 is going to be nuts at quarterback next year, Steve, between Penix, Cam Ward, who showed flashes. Oregon fans, I mean, he put up, I think, 4 bills against Oregon at Washington State, and he's only going to get better after a full season of Power 5 football. DJU going to Corvallis, Bo Nix coming back. Caleb Williams, ho-hum, he's only won the Heisman. I think every Pac-12 fan has a respect and almost kind of like, man, this guy again for Cam Rising, who seems to crush dreams left and right. What a crazy quarterback conference is going to be heading into next season.
Yeah, and by the way, DJ Hugo, could we steal that and just turn it into that so we don't have to take a moment before we pronounce his name every single time, which will hopefully be a lot. And I think it was the guy who used to work for the athletic department, Joe Waltosti. Somebody posted the 9 high-level quarterbacks that are going to be playing next year, and 8 of them are transfers. So if that doesn't tell you the story of 2022, but just from an entertaining point of view and from a selfish point of view, if you look at what Jonathan Smith has created, season 1 of Kalen DeBoer, what Lanning has done, I mean, just that three-way between the Ducks, Beavs, and Washington, I think that's going to be equally nuts and just going to just ignite fans like we haven't seen probably since 2000.
Well, and, we've covered enough Pac-10 and Pac-12 seasons, Steve, where, you look back, like, the beginning of the season and really kind of since COVID kind of came into our world, the Pac-12's kind of been a bit of a doormat and a bit of a punching bag for the rest of college football. And there were some obvious pitfalls, right? Larry Scott and his leadership and his money mismanagement and all of that stuff that came center stage, the officiating and everything else. And this summer with USC and UCLA out the door in 2 years, there was a very real possibility that this conference was not going to be in existence in 2 years. How big was it this season to not just have UCLA and USC be good, but to have Washington, Oregon, Oregon State, Utah, all of those teams being 10 wins or more and kind of saving the Pac-12?
Yeah, I think it kind of flipped the narrative, and I think you brought up an important point. Larry Scott, who when he first took over for Tom Hansen was kind of like a breath of fresh air. I remember we were still working together, and after Media Day in L.A., he sent all the coaches back to ESPN. They had a second day, and they were on the upswing, and then, like you said, there was his mismanagement, and then the bomb dropped. I can tell you the day, it was June 30th that the Trojans and Bruins were leaving, and so it was basically like, all right, guys, there's a lot on the line this season. What have you got? And they came across, and it turned out to be dipping into the Big Ten to Indiana, the SEC to Auburn, to bring great quarterback play to this conference and to shine a more positive light. I think in the end ends up saving the day. And whether they're just going to roll as the Pac-10 once again, like they did prior to 2011, or if they're going to try to add teams, I think there's an element of stability that a lot of people weren't so sure would exist prior to this season.
Yeah, I think you got to go back to the Pac-10, don't you? Right, that's all we do anymore, Steve, in 2022, right? Karate Kid is back. Top Gun is back. Right, all we do is just go back to the old stuff and just kind of rehash it and bring it back. So if I'm Cliff, like let's go back that old Pac-10 logo, with the sun at the zero, like the one that used to be on the court down at MacArthur Court in the pit. Let's get the old Pac-10 logo back. Let's go back Pac-10 Classic. Call it a day.
Yeah, I was thinking I found a great way to save money. Somebody go back into the old storage closet in Walnut Creek and try and find the letterhead, the notepads, all the banners and everything, and say, look, we could just stay with the Pac-10. All you have to do is kind of change the computer printout you use when you paint the fields, and we're set.
Done and done. Hey, Steve, always love talking to you. Thanks so much for getting up early with us. And again, very happy New Year to you, and look forward to talking to you again soon, buddy.
Yeah, always a lot of fun. Always great hearing from you, Justin. You guys have a great New Year. We'll talk when the calendar flips.